Hello, I'm Ethan Izzard, and this is Joshua Keel.
Hello.
Today our guest is Harley Hindle.
Hiya.
Welcome to Pod Fiction. Today we are looking at the 1986 film Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner and based on the book The Body, written by Stephen King. Stand By Me is the story of four young boys on the quest to find a dead body. So Joshua, what did you think about this movie?
Well, did you know that they were originally going to go by the name The Body, as with the book, but they decided no, because it sounds too much like a bodybuilder film or a sex film. Just a fun fact.
Oh wow, okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
What an interesting fact there. So our guest Harley, what do you think about this movie?
Oh my god, I loved it so much. It made me cry. I teared up. I loved it. I love the relationship between Chris and Gordy. It's perfect. It's such a brilliant film. Probably one of my favorites.
You can keep talking.
I really I feel like I personally connect with maybe Gordy a little bit. And I think that's why it affected me so much. And I teared up at the end, definitely. Oh, it was such a beautiful film.
Yeah, I agree. The ending definitely hits you hard, you know, just the final line mixed with the whole music. I think the music throughout the whole film was really top notch, you know, it really
I agree.
Immersed you in the 1950s era, you know.
I really enjoyed the sparing use of the music. It wasn't overwhelming. It didn't constantly play. It was there when you needed it, and it had its impact because it was used so sparingly.
And I also like the as a Western fan myself, the inclusion of the outro song from Gunsmoke. That was a nice little one.
Well, I know some of the songs that were in the film, and although I wanted to sing along a couple of times, it didn't distract me from the film. I was still connected with the film. And I think that's really good, really clever the way they did it, because it didn't distract me and I could still focus on the story.
And like the story overall, it's like as much as it is about the whole, you know, looking for the dead body, it could all just be seen as a metaphor, you know, for growing up, because there's that line where, you know, at the very start of the movie where he says Castle Rock has a population of, you know, 12,000 people, but to us it was the entire world. Then when they go back, they start talking about how it's all changed. And just little messages like that. And I think it's one of those films that the more you grow up, the more you'll appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. I think just the whole 12-year-olds and things like that. Like, I've had friendships like that when I was 12, and I've never had friendships like that since. It feels like such a personal film in a way. I loved it so much. It's just really well made, and I just love the story, and everything about it is just, it's perfect. So much. Love it.
I know you guys mentioned about how you grew up, with the film, I guess, but do you realise how the film, it's 30 years old, but it's still as relevant today as it was 30 years ago when it came out? And I think that's very rare in films these days, to have something that's so relevant, even though it's in a complete different era and generation that it was brought out in. Yeah,
pretty much everyone has friendships like that when they're younger. Even if it's not when they were 12 specifically, but friendship tends to be a big thing for most people, and I think that makes people connect with the film more and with the characters like Chris and Gordy. Them two are the ones that I love them too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think the cast in there is so perfect. Obviously, River Phoenix, you know, rest in peace and all that, but honestly, the cast in that movie was so great, and I think Joshua has more to talk about that.
I completely agree with Ethan. I think the casting in this film was amazing. Like, the fact that they used the people who they used, like the child actors, made that film what it is. I think without them, it would be an okay film. It wouldn't be as good as it is.
Well, I think obviously it's very difficult with child actors, you know, to really sort of bring something out of them. And I know Stuart spoke about at the end of the movie, you know, having them to resort to quite horrible tactics, you know, to get a real good performance out of these kids. But I think it really, really helped the movie, because probably in my opinion, probably one of the best acted movies of all time, because usually child actors are quite garbage, you know.
Yeah.
But in this movie, that it just somehow gets brought out above the rest, and there's a popular line in Hollywood, you know, if don't work with children or animals. But then this movie, it just shines through it so hard, because like the chemistry between the kids works so perfectly. It's like you could sit back and watch the movie and it would look like they've known each other for years, you know, just the chemistry, and it's with the dialogue as well, that it just emanates and gives off the atmosphere of the friendship.
I just want to add that I found an article here, and it's Will Wheaton suggested that the success of the film was due to the casting choices, and that Rob Reiner had picked the 4 boys, because they weren't necessarily acting. I think they were just being themselves in that movie, and I think that helped a lot, because obviously they're child actors, and like you said, they're not necessarily the best. They're kind of really good some days, not so good the other, and it's unpredictable with them. But them basically playing just a slightly altered version of themselves really helped.
I think one of the most heartbreaking parts for me was when it showed Gordy having that dream about his brother's funeral, and it just broke my heart, because even like the follow-up of that as well, with between the conversation between Chris and Gordy, and like how upset Gordy is about missing his brother, but then Chris also has his problems. He seems like such a rebel kid, and he's like seen as just the bad guy, really, in a way, but he's actually he's much deeper than that. He's such a real character, and I think that's part of the reason why it really affected me in a way.
I think, obviously there's a weird sort of connection, because there's a film that came out in 1991 called Boys in the Hood, and even though they're very different movies in subject matter, they still sort of have the same sort of themes, and the endings are also very similar. While in, you know, I don't want to spoil Boys in the Hood, but like they have a similar sort of ending, you know, seeing people sort of go off and do their own thing. And it's just like, this movie is a staple of grown-up movies. Dare I say it, probably one of the best, maybe the best grown-up movies of all time, you know.
Oh, I definitely agree. I love it so much.
So well written. And, you know, Stephen King, he has a knack of just creating, you know, his books make perfect films, The Shining. And I just think it's just a classic.
After watching this film, I really want to go out and read The Body, the book which it's based off, and that says a lot, as I'm not usually one to read. So
I want to read the book. I do, definitely.
Like, there's some people read the book first, and it has to be the book first. But with this, I think this film has made me want to read the book, which not a lot of films do. I'm just like, that was a good film, but this one's like, yeah.
And there's a lot of controversy about the ending, where, you know, he talks about Chris getting stabbed, and when he leaves the computer, he doesn't save the document. I've seen this online. And he doesn't actually save the document, he just turns the computer off. And it's like, I think loads of people obviously went to, it's a mistake, obviously, you know, it's the director making a mistake. However, I think it's sort of weirdly humbling in a way that Gordy grew up to be a writer, but then he wrote about his friends and this really long story, and almost in memoriam to Chris. And then in the end, it's like the deer. He doesn't want to tell anyone about it. It's him. He just wants it to be to himself, and only the people involved know. And I think that's sort of just as much as he wrote about it, he didn't want it to become a big book. He just wanted it to. It's something that he and only the
gives
other
him
people
closure
enjoy.
in a way, I think.
And the endings of the other 2 boys as well is also really sad. You know, like LeChance, he just wanted to be in the military so badly, and he never caught the break. And it just his ending showed how, like, someone so dedicated, once rejected from doing what they wanted to do, can just go on a bad path. You know, spent time. But then I just love Vern. Vern is such a lovable character, and he gets such a lovable job. He has some kids, and he married his high school sweetheart, and he drives a forklift, and it's like, that's such a Vern job, you know.
It's so I love Vern so much. It's just such a sweetheart.
I think this film is very bittersweet. Like, in the beginning, the first thing you see is the newspaper saying this lawyer has been stabbed, and at that point the audience doesn't know that this is Chris. They're just like, oh, it's just some random lawyer. Yeah, you're not really emotionally connected, and then throughout the story it builds up. You learn that Chris then goes on to be that lawyer, and the audience, it's like that moment of like, oh, like it goes full circle. You're there like, now that makes sense. The first scene makes sense. It's like a little Easter egg, and I think it's very bittersweet.
When I first saw the first scene, if I'm honest, before the rest of the film started, the first scene with the newspaper and with Gordy sat there, I kind of, in a way, made me think, oh, did he kill the lawyer? Is that what's going on? I don't know, because I'd never really heard of the film before and read into it, or I thought I'd just go into it with fresh. And I was kind of like, oh, is that what's happening? And then I realized, oh no, it's complete opposite. And I was like, oh, that's actually really sad.
Oh yeah, it's a very sad movie, but then I think that's where it sort of draws the audience for this film as well, because like many films appeal to a target demographic, but I think this film is just like, it's a film for everybody. Everybody can watch Stand By Me and self-insert themselves or other people into the roles of the main character or one of his friends. It's just like everyone can watch it and just go like, oh. And I think it's not just for, because, you know, young people can watch it, like, you know, and be like, oh, wow, that's like me now. And then people who are 80 can watch it and be like, oh, I remember I remember my friends when I was 12.
Oh.
I think also the meaning can change. So you said like when you're young now, I think if you see this film now, you relate it to the past 5 years. If you see it when you're 80, you've got so much more. Like it could be something completely different that happens between now and when you're 80. And I think that's why this film was one of the only films that is able to be so relevant in different time periods, because it's these different audiences who see themselves in it in a variety of different ways.
And I think, again, that just goes back to the masterclass of the writing, you know, because it's not just Gordy. Even though he's a character and has identifiable traits, he's yet just so slightly blank that you can self-insert yourself without it being really messed up. Like, for example, I don't think I could insert myself in the role of John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, you know, because there's so much character there that you can never really put yourself in that position. But with Gordy, he still has a character, but then you can also still self-insert yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I love this film so much.
It's almost as if it's real. Like, it's almost as if this actually happened. Whereas in Pulp Fiction, obviously that it's so fiction, and it's like this. It is a fiction. It's off a fiction book, but it's so real. Like, it's 4 kids going out to do something that, yes, it's probably no one's gone out to find a body, but it's the way they do it and what happens on that journey that's so real, and that makes it relatable with all these characters. I
don't think the body's even that much of a massive thing in the film until the point that they find the body, because it's more about the friendship, it's more about their journey as they go to find the body. I don't think it is a big thing, really. I think it's more their journey than the actual body itself, because they left it there in the end anyway, so that wasn't really a massive thing.
Yeah, I think the body was a good MacGuffin of the story, but then just like, it's more about the journey, and then when they actually get there, even when they find the body, it's still not the big thing. It's more the confrontation with Ace, which is the big part of that scene. And then Gordy sort of coming to terms with the loss of his brother. And I think the ending, where it just quickly jumps back to them just walking across this scenery, and just what does he say? He says something like, we walked back and none of us really said anything. Everything just felt different, and it's just like hits you so hard. And then I think, going on to more technical aspects, the cinematography of this movie is so just amazing.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love. Oh, so good.
Just going back to the body, I think that it symbolises them growing up and maturing. Like, they've seen this body, and instead of going, oh, let's go find a body, it's that was someone's life, and then they decide not to go and put themselves in the newspapers and stuff like that. They phone in anonymously, and they just grow up as characters. And after that, you see them split up. They go their own ways. Chris becomes his lawyer. He leaves town, does that, and it's just like that's that's the scene where things change for everyone. And I also just want to say that Kiefer Sutherland looks so young in this movie. Like, he looks nothing like he does now.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to talk more about cinematography, and I think Harley would as well, about the train scene.
Yes, definitely.
Like, I'm not really a cinematographer person, so I don't really understand lenses and all that. But they used a special lens to make it look like the train was almost behind the kids. I think Josh got more to talk about.
The lens was a 600mm prime lens. No, it was a focus lens. So it's basically, they used it to flatten the image so that the train appeared a lot closer than it was. And it's just tricks like that the cinematographer and the director have chosen, in this case, to get around like risk assessments and safety, because obviously you can't have a train like 2 meters away from this kid. But it's just tricks like that are quite simply solved that make that scene so, I think, iconic.
But yeah, there's a scene, just the wide shots in this movie are just beautiful. Gives me a nice little reminder of Barry Lyndon, you know, with all these big, huge wide shots of the environment. One of my favourites is when they're walking back and from finding the body, and they walk through a cotton field, and yet you see all the little buds of cotton zooming up in the air, you know, because it's windy, and it's just such a beautiful shot because you see the 4 boys walking across this field whilst there's little balls of cotton flying up into the air, and oh my, it's just so brilliant. And just the scenes where Gordy and Chris talk, just like, it may be just a simple, you know, shot, reverse shot, but then just the acting from the characters is just like, it could almost be a silent movie. Just the looks they give each other is just so real and shows their friendship.
Another shot that I liked was the kind of close-ups of like when Gordy's crying or when Chris are crying, and they're both huddled together with each other, and because it's so close together, it makes you feel like you're with them in a way, and I think that makes it more personal for the viewers. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good movie. One of my favourites. So I think we're going to start wrapping up. I've been Ethan Izzard.
I've been Joshua Keel.
And I'm Holly Hindle.
And next week, it's a special Asthetica episode where me and Josh will be interviewing people on their top 3 favourite Asthetica short films. So, you know, be looking forward to that one.
It's going to be a big one.
It's going to be very big and very stressful. Okay. So thank you, Harley, for being on here, and we'll see you guys next week for the Asthetica Special.